John here. So I'm looking at the data, I'm looking at the information, and what I'm seeing happening around the world, what I'm seeing happening right here in America, they're paving the way for the biggest real estate crash in history. I'm not just saying that. I'm looking at everything. And in this live stream, I'm going to walk you through everything that I see. And if you think I'm wrong, point it out in the comment section. And if it makes sense, I'll look into it and we'll get down to the truth. But right now, what I'm seeing is going to be the complete destruction of the middle class. Essentially, the 1% is about to take over nearly all the assets. So here's how this is looking right now. Quick, what's up in the chat? So here's what I'm seeing. So as of right now, this just came out. China just overtook America as the richest nation on earth. And right now, China, if you're paying attention, they're basically, their economy's booming. Everything is, it's actually never been better. So the line is always moving. Hold on one second, I'm gonna fix this. There we go. The line is always moving. The world has become a lot wealthier in the last 2 decades, but the distribution of wealth has shifted drastically, with China surpassing the United States as the richest nation in the world, according to a new global financial data from McKinsey & Co. The world is changing fast, and with its space barons and Musk and Bezos increasingly touted as the leaders in the tech industry, science and engineering are becoming more tethered to financial activity than ever before. Speaking of Gates and Bezos, or not Gates, speaking of Musk and Bezos, they are right now liquidating massive holdings in their companies. Over $11 billion they recently liquidated. And the richest 10% of households are only getting richer. The richest arm of consultants working with McKinsey & Co. analyzed the balance sheets of 10 different countries that combined comprise 60% of the world's total income. We're now wealthier than we have ever been, said Jan McKinsey, a McKinsey partner at Bloomberg. The world's net worth rose to an unprecedented $514 trillion in 2020 from an earlier net worth of $156 trillion in 2000. So it's basically tripled. With China taking over the single largest share, nearly 1/3 of the world's income, China's wealth launched to $120 trillion from its previous $7 trillion. Look at that growth. So America basically 3x'd over the last 20 years. And then China went from 7 trillion to 100 trillion. So they basically 30x'd. They 30x'd. And we 3x'd. An unspeakably colossal growth from its days before joining the World Trade Organization, which accelerated its rise to power, according to the report, right? So, okay, China's taking over that. Okay. Now, this is where things start getting interesting. So Colorado just made this announcement, which they're going to start this with larger events. This came out today. And what's happening here is they're saying gatherings more than 500 people, parts of Metro Detroit, will require proof. So it's starting to Colorado right now. Colorado is one of several Mountain West states hit hard by it, driven by 150,000 Americans, right? So what we're seeing here in New Mexico, 7-day rolling average, it's going to start going from state to state is what we're going to see next. That's what we're going to see. We're going to start seeing this hit state to state, right? Okay, but then what we're looking at here is the labor unions are suing Biden. Again, this came out today. This came out this afternoon. Pay close attention to this because this is important. They're suing Biden. Now, they're not suing because of, the mandates. No, they are literally, several of the nation's largest labor unions are suing Biden over this, not to overturn, but to expand to cover more businesses. So it's not just 100 employees or more. No, this is the end goal here is going to be all businesses, right? So United Food and Commercial Worker International Union and the AFL-CIO asked the U.S. Courts of Appeals for the District of Columbia last week to review the requirements, right? While the unions did not provide arguments for the petition, a spokesman for the Food Workers Union told CNBC the group wants the mandates expanded to cover as many businesses as possible, right? Many businesses as possible. They've already been discussing this in great detail. So the union also wants the new Labor Department rule to ensure that employees don't have to cover the cost. So what is this saying here? They're saying that their employers, they're trying to fight for the employers to cover the cost, which could be $200 per. So if they have to do it once a week, that's $800 in additional expense every single month for the employee, right? Now, is the employer going to just say, okay, I'm going to pay an extra $800 a week, which is probably 1 week's salary? Am I going to pay an additional 1 week's salary per month to keep an employee that is not compliant? Probably not. Probably not. If this ends up going, that's how they will be essentially moving this needle forward, right? So the Food Workers Union said in a statement they want to strengthen the worker protections to ensure that as many workers are covered as possible, that frontline employees have a voice in how it's implemented, and the employees don't shoulder the cost of all this. So they're basically, this is another big blow to small businesses, right? Another very, very big blow to small businesses. Now, what's fascinating to me is if you look at the real numbers as to who owns the most properties in America, it's not corporations, it's not private equity firms, it's mom and pop landlords that own 1 or 2 properties, less than 10 properties. These people hold the bulk of the housing stock, right? And so their businesses are now going to be set to undergo a very, very big problem. The Service Employees International Union also challenged Biden's this last week in the U.S. court. 175,000 workers. They represent primarily building security guards, cleaners across New York, New England, Jersey, Philly, Pennsylvania, DC Metro, and Florida. Can't forget that one because a lot of people think, oh, I live in Florida, so I don't have to worry about this. No, I'm in Florida. Trust me. I would love to say, hey, no, Florida, we're great. What I think is going to happen here, and this is where I'm seeing this, what I think is going to happen is I think that it's going to go from America, and then it's going to start going down and down, kind of like a funnel. At the bottom, there's going to be Texas, there's going to be Florida, there's going to be a few different states that are, holding up. But over time, it's going to continue getting eroded. And then what's going to happen is that all the other states, the other 45 states, are going to blame those states for the reason why we can't get back to normal. And then what's going to happen is that things are going to get really bad for those governors. And then over time, Florida and Texas, they could all see the same fate as New Jersey, New York, California, Washington. This is where they're going to be moving this needle. We believe that we have to do our part for communities to return to normal, right? Should be broader scope to employers with less than 100 employees, okay? So what we're seeing here then next is a really good example of what's happening now in Germany, right? This is just for the people that are not yet, they haven't stepped forward yet, right? Berlin, they're getting ready for this now. And so Berlin's going to be stepping through this very, very big change. So we can expect this to come here probably the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right before the holiday traveling, maybe just after Thanksgiving, this could be, or maybe just before. Thanksgiving's in a couple weeks, so it's going to be pushing it really close. Whitehouse.gov, they talk a lot about this, saying that, 70%, but the numbers are, they kind of bounce around between 58 and 70%. But here's where I see things that are going to be, this is where I think things are going to get very interesting. So we had this situation with this eviction moratorium, right? And this eviction moratorium in a lot of states is null and void. Now it's no longer, right? But the court systems are so backed up in each state that even if you wanted to evict somebody now, you might not see a judge until, depending on the state, might be 6 months, might be a year, might be 18 months. It all depends, because what's going to happen is as these courts begin opening up more and more and more, they're going to start to see the really big cases, the domestic violence, those cases, and then it's going to trickle down more into the landlord-tenant stuff, right? And they have this set up intentionally. Now, what is then going to happen is if we step into a situation where all these new changes come into place and they start doing what they're saying here, if this ends up happening and they start moving in this direction, what we're then going to see is people that have already said, no, I'm not going to do it, are then going to be saying, okay, now I'm in a position where I'm going to lose my job and my boss is going to fire me, right? And now inflation is about to worsen over the winter months. So gas prices are skyrocketing, food prices are skyrocketing, everything's going back up. The price of a turkey, I was reading, it was $25 about 2 years ago. Now it's $56 for the same turkey. So everything is going to be increasing. So what I think happens next is going to be just absolutely fascinating. So you have rising costs, you have employers that are going to be pushed into the wood chipper very, very soon. And these employers are going to be letting go of a lot of people. And then these people are going to say to themselves, okay, what am I going to do? If I move, I'll have nowhere to go. So I'm going to just stay in my apartment. The court system, if I get evicted, I get evicted, but I need a place to live for now. And the court system is going to be so backed up, it's going to be another push into the system, backing up the courts even more, right? And when we look at the numbers of people that are actually going to have to make this decision right now as to where they go, the numbers are just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And that's why I think nearly all states are going to be stepping into exactly what Newsom just did. I played this video. In case you haven't seen it, it's like 10 seconds. I'm going to play it again because it really brings everything home. Because what I think is going to happen is that Newsom right now is going to be doing this. So, and not just Newsom, this is going to be all states.
We put $6 billion, $5.8 billion for HomeKey. Some of you may know a little bit about HomeKey. We started buying hotels and motels last year. Seemed an opportunistic time to do it amidst the pandemic. A lot were vacant. A lot of people were desperate. A lot of small business owners were very happy that someone was going to come in and purchase those assets. We were able to purchase 6,000 units in 5.5 months.
Right. So what they essentially did was, they had the policies in place that are pushing landlords, again, into the wood chipper, and then the state runs out with all the funds that they've accumulated, all this relief funds, and they start acquiring everybody's property, right? What I'm seeing is going to happen is that we're going to be stepping into this situation here, which is going to one second here. All right. So we're going to be stepping into this situation right here where we have rising costs. People are going to have to make this decision, right? But gas prices are continuing to rise. Household debt is now passes an all-time high of $15 trillion, right? So you have household debt more than $15.24 trillion in the third quarter, a 1.9% increase. So you have debt at all-time highs. Household debt passed $15 trillion. Mortgages rose 2.2% to nearly $10.7 trillion. Autos increased $28 billion. $286 billion increase on debt. Total household burden to $15.24. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a lot of people living in fantasy land, thinking that the economy is going to keep booming, everything's going to be fine. And generally, when people have that mindset that don't understand what's coming next, is that they get hit with it like a ton of bricks. Right? So we have this household debt problem, and this just merges very interesting. They say inflation is good for you. Kamala Harris is talking about how inflation is good, but we're stepping into the winter where people on average spend about $1,000 for the holidays. So people right now are going to go, spending money, buying stuff for their girlfriend and their boyfriend, family members, and then when everything seems to be like it's going to hit January 4th, people are going to be coming out of the holidays with no job and more debt than ever before. And a large percent of Americans are going to be unemployed. Now, these numbers, how it all comes together, all coupled with this new push, which is, 36 Congress members take a push for this new mandate to basically shut down domestic travel for, people that don't comply with this, right? So lawmakers want Biden to make it happen. They're pushing for the travel before the holidays. So as this continues happening, then we look at it all comes together so beautifully. And it's so obvious what's happening here. The U.S. travel and tourism industries generated over 1.6 trillion in economic output in 2017, supporting 7.8 million U.S. jobs. Travel and tourism exports accounted for 11% of all U.S. exports and nearly a third, 32% of all U.S. service exports. That same year, U.S. travel and tourism output represented 2.8% of GDP. Expenditures of international visitors to the U.S. surpassed $251 billion in 2017, yielding $77 billion in trade surplus that year. According to the Department of Commerce projections, the U.S. will welcome 95.5 million international visitors annually by 2023, nearly twice that amount in 2000. The U.S. leads the world in international travel and tourism exports and ranks third in terms of visitation, right? So you're going to have all of these industries. What industries are going to be impacted by these new changes, right? People domestically. If you have family members that have complied and other family members that have not, it's odds are you're not going to be taking that trip because not everyone's going to be able to join. Some people are going to say, okay, let's go ahead. And then the others are not going to go and trip's just not going to happen, right? So what industries are going to be impacted? Airbnb, restaurants, concert venues, stadiums, a lot of small businesses around those tourist hubs, Los Angeles, California, all the big hubs, Chicago, Delray, Miami, New York, Manhattan, a lot of these big areas that are going to lose a lot of people. And then what's ultimately going to happen, those areas are then going to suffer even more, right? So what I'm thinking happens is they may bring back this eviction moratorium. They've already talked about it, right? In many states, it's gone, but in California, it's until, they say until December 31st. In Massachusetts, let's see here, courts cannot order eviction for non-payment of rent. So let's see here. Jersey is until December 31st. New York, the 21st of December. So there's still states that have it. But what I'm thinking is going to happen is I think that we're going to see another series of closures coupled with mass job layoffs, coupled with high inflation, coupled with maximum consumer debt. I mean, the highest consumer debt we've ever had in the country, and all supported with the takeover from big corporations on small business. But where I see this all coming in so nicely for them is, right now they say about 12 million adults are behind on rent payments, right? Okay, so 12 million. And they say that there's 139 million households or housing units in total in America, right? So 139 million, you just simply divide the two. It's 11.6 households per 100 that are behind on their rental payments. 11.6. It's okay. But they say 1 million homeowners are behind on their mortgage, which isn't that much. But interestingly, these numbers seem so manipulated because last month they were saying it was 2 million. So I don't really trust that info. But what they're saying next is that what does the future look like for New York's eviction moratorium? They were saying that if New York doesn't extend the eviction moratorium past January, thousands of tenants will suddenly be vulnerable to eviction. So when they're putting this stuff out in front of your face, what are they saying? They're saying that for the benefit of society, we must morally extend it, right? That's they're putting this out there for a reason. I believe they're getting ready to extend the moratorium in California, New York, New Jersey. I believe that that's going to continue getting extended for a while. So if you have a tenant right now in any of these states, what I would suggest doing is trying to negotiate with them if you think that they're going to be a problem in the next 6 months, because when they realize that, hey, the moratorium is extended potentially and the courts are backed up, good luck getting them out. So you might just be sitting there with a big loss every month. So they go on to say that right now there's 157 million people who are employed, right, in the U.S. There was an increase by about 2 million. And right now they're saying 58% are fully, 58%. Here's where the numbers start getting really, really clear, really obvious. So you take that 58% and you take it from the overall workforce of this 157 million, right? So you take these two numbers and it comes out to this, these people are not fully. So of the 157 million, 92 million are not fully. Or no, excuse me, are fully. So 38.2. So, or 32.2 actually. 32.2. Hold on one second here. Just want these numbers to be very spot on. So 32.2% of this. So what is that number? 50 million, right? So we take this 50 million and then we say, 40%, roughly 40%, it gives the total number of this percentage. That's not, these are the people that are not fully. Let's just say, for example, that 60% will comply. 60% will comply now with the mandate. Now, 40% will not, right? So if that is the case, then we have a situation where we have 36 million people that will be out of a job. 36 million people that will be out of a job, right? So we say, okay, what is the entire population that will be out of a job if 60% comply with the mandate? That's a big number. I'm being very conservative here, saying, because most of the people that have not yet have no intention of doing it, right? So let's just say 60% rollover, say, okay, I'm doing it, and 40% stand strong. If that does happen, the unemployment rate would be 23.52% plus our current unemployment rate is 4.6%, right? Together, it's a 27.6% unemployment rate. And if we look at, 1929, the peak in 1933, the greatest depression ever, was 25.6%. The big difference here is that these jobs, most of them, these big corporations don't have an intention of these jobs ever coming back. They're going to start rolling everything out through automation, AI, and robotics. They're going to try to solve these problems because they don't want to go through it again. And so as they're beginning to invest in their infrastructure and do these types of things, then what's going to happen? Those jobs won't come back, and the unemployment rate's not going to change. So what will then likely happen is universal basic income, some type of welfare system will be built out in place. But interestingly, it doesn't just stop there. I have a friend of mine, a really good friend, smart guy. He's got a couple hundred units in the East Coast. And I told him about a year ago, hey man, this is what I think is going to happen. I think that building codes are going to change. It's all going to be about making your buildings less resistant to the to carbon and everything else. He's like, oh, that's conspiracy. That's not real. That's not going to happen, right? So I posted something on my Instagram. If you're not following me on Insta, go follow me on Insta. This is John Williams. But so I posted something on Insta talking about what's happening in Ithaca, New York. And he texts me, and I screenshotted it, but I scratched out his name. I scratched out his name, obviously intentionally, because I'm not going to share his personal info. But this is what he texts me, and it's very interesting because now this guy would never wanted to believe any of it. But now what's happening is that he is so since it's impacting him now, this is how this looks. Afternoon crew, this is to his construction crew. We recently were told that we have the mandatory DET test to close out all permits on a duplex conversion. We've never had to do this test before. We're wondering if there's something we can do to avoid having to pay the fee of $500 per unit. The inspector stated that the air pressure AP needs to be below 5 to pass, and that most people doing renovations don't pass. If that's the case and the test is better geared towards new construction, why make this a requirement? It seems like a money grab. Can anyone share their experience on this test, if they're able to avoid it, or best practices for navigating the process, right? He's like, this is slowly starting to creep into most cities for this solution, right? And I said, well, yep, look into it. It's pretty scary, bro. The goal is to get all these buildings off of fossil fuels. It's no longer a conspiracy. So that's what's happening right now. Like, we look at this. Small business, medium-sized business, they're about to get crushed in the next couple months. Consumer debt is at an all-time high. Court systems are backed up. And look at Gavin Newsom, what he's doing right now. He's already using the funds that were given to him to acquire units throughout California. They bought 6,000 units last 5.5 months. What are they going to buy in 2022? I wouldn't be surprised if they bought 40 or 50,000 more units just taking over the state. You look at Florida, for example. Florida distributed enough rent relief to match New York, for example, distributed 8%. Florida only distributed 2% of the rent relief, in line with California. So people think Florida is this Republican capitalistic state. Why are they distributing only 2% of the relief money? It doesn't make any sense. What makes sense to me is the core fundamentals. They're holding on to the cash for a reason. I think the reason is that they want to start going out there and buying up as much property as possible. They're going to have all these new changes, all these new zoning regulations for real estate. We're stepping into an affordability crisis. And what's going to happen that's going to be even more interesting is that at the end, when all these people step onto an affordability issue, I believe rents are going to have to come down. And if rents drop by, say, 15 or 20%, you're going to see almost every landlord go belly up. Because what most landlords do is they'll go out there, they'll buy a building, they'll fix it up, they'll do, the BRRRR method, they'll essentially increase the rents, fix it up, refi the property, refinance it, take out a loan bigger than the initial loan, and then essentially they have like 80% debt on the asset. And they keep doing it, one property, the next, the next, the next. And so they're going to be in a situation where if they can't reduce their rents 15 or 20%, their whole portfolio comes down like a house of cards. A house of cards. This isn't going to be, a couple landlords. This is going to be most mom and pops. Because you couple that not just with the rent reductions, but you have higher vacancies, you have court systems that are backed up, and their own businesses are struggling underneath all these changes. High inflation cost, everything. This is like the holy trinity towards collapsing the real estate market. That's why I think that we're stepping into a very, very interesting time. And I think that this buying opportunity is going to be unlike anything that anyone could ever imagine. Unlike anything that they can ever imagine. How do they get people to do what they want? Well, they have to have control, right? And the easiest way to do that is through finances. They're building out this whole artificial economy. The stock market doesn't make any sense. The real estate market doesn't make any sense. Most things don't make any sense. You can't look at fundamentals on most things anymore. Everything just is crazy out of whack, and everyone's a genius in the market. Most people don't know what they're doing. This is a setup, I believe. I think we're going to see something big, something huge. Most people aren't ready for. I hope all of you guys are. I honestly would just get ready, because there will never be an opportunity to invest in your lifetime or mine than in the next couple of years, because everything looks like it's coming to a head very, very soon, next couple months. So what do you guys think about this? Drop your comments. This is just nuts, man. It's so hard for me because I talk to people all the time, and a lot of people are just like, hey, this is just going to keep going. It's going to keep going. But it's not. There's no way it's going to keep going. When they end travel, domestic travel, and millions and millions and millions of people are completely just going to leave the workforce, they're going to have an option. If they can't pay for their rent and pay for their food, what they're going to do is they're going to pay for their food, and they're not going to pay for the rent, and they're going to wait until the eviction process. People are going to hang on for dear life, and they're going to feed themselves before they feed their landlord. Crazy times, big opportunities. Get ready for it. Fix your credit if your credit, could need some fixing. I have a video, a YouTube video that I posted maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks ago about how to get your credit score to 800 for free. I'd watch that if you need to fix your credit a little bit. The better your credit score, the more likely it is you're going to get great financing. You're going to be able to get loans, and you're going to qualify for purchases. When the market bottoms out and things really fall, you want to be ready, willing, and able to go out there, close on a great deal, and change your life. All right, guys, see you on the next live stream.